started since everybody's here for the panel. So we've got our esteemed panelists here, which is great. And so I think we'll make a start. I think I've messed up on the timing because we have the room from 6 till 9, which doesn't mean we actually start at 6. So sorry if you were here at 6. We're not really this tardy, it's just poor planning. Not used to people, really. So welcome, my name is Andrew Mudimer. I'm the current president of the Houston chapter of HFES. This is my last event as president. This is when the handover happens, and I hand over to the next president who was elected last year. And I have a president, that's me, a secretary and a treasurer that move along with so those three roles all run together. And then supporting the president for that year, or 2 years, is the program director, which this year is Ian, and an elections director, which is Adelaide, and she isn't here. And so, coming up, the new president will be Hannah Bowman. The new treasurer will be Maria, and the new secretary will be Daniela. So that's a fun group of three there. And then the new elect positions were just decided, and that will be, the president will be Tyler Duke, who was a UHCL alumni. Sango will be the treasurer after Maria, so he can blame Maria for anything. And then the new secretary will be Vanessa after that. So they've won the election. Congratulations, and welcome to the team. Thank you for volunteering. We're very lucky to have this space. Rice University has supported this event for many years. It's been great to have this opportunity to meet here in the kind of the middle of Houston. So everybody comes in, hopefully against traffic. And I'd like to thank Phil Kortum for helping us out with that, and the other professors of the psychology department have been very supportive of this work as well. And so thank you to I don't think I have much else to say. I think I'm just going to hand it over to you. So Ian's going to moderate today. So we'll...
Thank you, Ian. Go. Hey everybody. I think I know a lot of you, but if we haven't met before, I'm Ian Robertson. I'm an alum of Rice University. I was under the tutelage of the venerable Phil Kortum. So if you can't tell, my outfit is sort of just a variation on so tonight's panel, we have a wide variety of experience and different domains, usually pretty representative of the kind of jobs that you can find here in Houston, but in general across the industry. Tonight is very casual, it's a very conversational style event, so it's going to be very interactive. What we're going to do is all the panelists are going to give about a 3 to 5 minute introduction. We can liver a little bit on that, a little more, a little less, depending on what they're comfortable with. Give you a sense of their background, who they are, what they do for work, what their identity is as an HF researcher, worker, professional, whatever their title is. There's a wide span of titles nowadays. UX. What they're going to do is they're going to give you background so you can get an idea of what you can learn from them. And what we're going to do today is we're going to learn by interaction between your questions and what they have to say on the subject. So I highly encourage interaction from the audience. Ask your questions, whether it's to a specific panel member, make that clear when you're asking, or if it's a general for the panel kind of a question. So you'll kind of learn, where you might want to aim. So like Phil is representing academia. If you have an academic related question, he might be the person to ask. I don't know, has anybody else taught or had any experience teaching at a university? No, so we can bully Phil when it comes to academic questions tonight. We don't have any audio support in this room, but so as you ask your question, try to project if you can, and then if we need to, I can run up, hear the question, and run back, but it's going to be pretty casual. So if you have a question, after we have introductions, first come, first serve. I'm going to try to go back and forth between up and down, left and right to make sure we get coverage. If I don't see you first, please don't take it personally. I'm going to do my best to select questions from around the audience. But with that, let's start from that part. Give your spiel, and then we will start taking questions from the audience after we come all the way down.
Okay, my name is Eric Thomas, and I work at HP Inc. So a quick note about HP. Many years ago, HP split into two companies, and so there's HP Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, I think is their official name, and then HP Incorporated, HP Inc. So HP Inc. is me, and that's kind of computers, printers, accessories, all that stuff. HPE does the enterprise servers and software and stuff. So I manage the human factors and ergonomics team at HP. We're inside the industrial design organization. And so industrial design is the designers that kind of make the product inside and out. Not engineer it, but design it, right? And so I'll get into a little bit more of what I do there in a minute, but I want to start and kind of go through my education and my career. So I started, let's see, I started at Texas Tech University studying engineering. I was interested in engineering. I was not bad at math, and so I wanted, it was a natural fit. Started after a couple years, I decided that I wasn't really super interested in engineering. It wasn't quite hitting me like I wanted it, like I thought it would. But I took a psychology course in one of my first 2 years and decided that psychology really did interest me. The human brain and how we don't know everything about it really interested me. And so I switched majors to psychology and finished that degree, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took a year off and trimmed trees just because. Actually, in my undergrad, in a summer course when Dr. DeLucia was there, I took a class from Dr. DeLucia, her undergrad cognition course, and in the beginning she said, before one of the classes, she said, hey, this is human factors, this is what it is. And it really piqued my interest because I started engineering, and human factors is kind of psychology and engineering put together. So I was really interested in that. After a year of trimming trees, I said, I want to go back and study that and do that. I want to trim trees forever. So, actually that's not true. I trimmed trees, and then I thought, I want to do mental health. So I went and got a job for 2 years doing mental health. And I was a caseworker for an inpatient mental health thing in Lubbock, and decided that while I was good at mental health, it was very draining for me and my personality type, and it wasn't quite a fit for me. That's when I decided to go back to human factors. So I like to explain that to say, your journey to your career can be winding, and don't be discouraged wherever you are. I've had lots of turns, and I really like where I've ended up, so that's why I kind of like to explain all those details. And then I started my graduate program at Texas Tech, kind of put together interdisciplinary studies and kind of started there for a year, and then finished up down here at UHCL for about a year and a half. So I graduated about 8 years ago, and an internship when I was at UHCL was at HP, so that's how I got plugged in to HP. I did at the same time I was doing a software internship, and I want to do hardware research, and so through that experience learned that I like hardware research much more than software research. So that's how I got to where I am. I started as an intern and just worked my way up, and I now manage the team that I started on. And we're a small team. I have 4 employees under me. And the work that we do I don't know how long I've been, but I'll try not to talk too much longer. The work that we do is, we kind of do all different types of research, so we wear lots of different hats as researchers. I like to think of myself as a very HF disciplined researcher, but I think commonly in a corporation people don't understand what that is and they don't really get what we do or what it is. They get research. UX is a big buzzword now, experience is a big buzzword, and so they kind of think that's what we do, is what is the experience of it, how good is this feature, how much are people willing to pay for it? Those are the questions I get asked a lot. But we kind of do all sorts of different things, all sorts of different methodologies, user testing, surveys, ethnographic research, kind of all sorts of different stuff on all sorts of different products, from VR to computers, accessories, displays, ergonomics, anthropometry, all that stuff. We kind of do it all. So,
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Phil Kortum. I'm a professor here at Rice University in the Psychological Sciences Department. I've been here a little over 18 years now. I study primarily voting systems and medical systems, both mostly in the global health domain for medical systems. I've taken sort of a strange path, not one that I'd recommend for most folks. Even though I've been here 18 years, I spent the first 18 years of my career in industry. And so I spent some time in the defense industry working on missile systems. And then I spent a decade at AT&T Laboratories, and so and that was kind of a heyday time because the internet was just becoming a thing, cell phones were just becoming a thing, and so a lot of the fundamental technologies that are out there, if you've done anything with telecommunications, I've probably had at least touched it a little bit, and so it's been very interesting. Due to a two-body problem, I got an opportunity to come back 18 years ago, back into the academic fold, and that's really unusual. Most of the times, that's the wrong direction to go. Once you've made your commitment to industry, it's hard to get back into the academic stream, and so I've been pretty fortunate in that realm. And so I'm not sure if many of you, I know that none of my students want to go to academics, but I can speak with a little authority on industry, so if you have some specific questions, I might be able to help you out with that.
Okay, next. So my name's Raquel Garcia. So I'm a senior human factors specialist at Sophic Synergistics. So my background, educational-wise, is a little more straightforward. So, straight from high school, I went to UHCL, got my bachelor's in psychology, and so I always knew I wanted to do something more with it. I just wasn't sure what. So I always knew I wanted to do my master's, but I didn't know what level of psychology or concentration. So through a friend of mine, I found out about Kelling's lab. I don't know if y'all heard of him, Dr. Kelling. So found out about human factors through there, and right as soon as I graduated, I applied to do my master's. And so then I did my master's at UHCL with the concentration in human factors. During my last semester, I was offered an internship at Sophic Synergistics, and so I've just stayed there since then. But so at Sophic, I've got the opportunity to do medical devices, so we help, or we work with companies to get them FDA clearance. So it's a lot of formative, iterative testing, and then their final, validation testing, helping them to write up their giant human factors engineering reports where they kind of have to tell the story of all the human factors they've done with their device from start to finish. We've also we've done aerospace stuff, so I've been fortunate enough to work with different companies. So we've done Dynetics. Right now we're working 2 big Axiom space contracts. So helping them with the suits and then building the next space station. So right now I'm serving as a technical HSI, so human systems integration lead for their station side efforts. So a lot of human factors work. Again, just taking a look at their different subsystems, anthropometry considerations, when they're going to do the maintenance activities they plan on doing on station, making sure that since they're opening it up for, it's a commercial space station, so they're opening it up, so you're looking at first to 99th percentile versus that more strict like ISS 5th to 95th. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff.
Nervous, but my name is Vanessa Jones. I am a human factors engineer at KBR and UHCL at NASA Johnson Space Center, which has been really cool. I want to kind of start back and work forward. So I'm originally from Kentucky. That's a huge part of my identity. If you talk to me at any point or you hear the accent slip in. I'm first generation college student. I was a low-income household. I grew up on a farm. College itself was a question on whether or not I could do that. And so starting from that point and then here now is like honestly surreal most days, even at the very, very beginning of my career. So I'm probably where some of those early kick in the door questions are going to go to when you have those. But I went to Morehead State University. It's a state university in Eastern Kentucky in the Appalachian foothills. I was very lucky to be introduced to human factors there, which a lot of people, they kind of get into their career, I've heard, is they get into their career and they find out about human factors and they transition in. I found it in undergrad, which was really fortunate. Some of you guys may resonate with that. But I was able to do research, 3 years of research at Morehead State University. I had very enabling researchers both there and at UHCL, where I went for my master's. So some of the research that I had done, I did trust and automation and failure and automation research back when that was really cool and new and trendy. I've done using video games as a diagnosis of ADD and ADHD. I've also did a couple other video game research. I've done some VR research. I did package redesign to prevent overdoses for over-the-counter medication. So a lot of really cool questions that human factors applies to and UX applies to, and I've been really interested and really fortunate to be able to kind of pursue that. I came to Houston, Texas a couple years ago to get my master's at UHCL, also with Dr. Kellen, where I was enabled again, and I've done some really cool research there, and ended up at a fantastic internship opportunity with KBR at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I had been enabled again and done some really cool VR research. And when I graduated in May, that's kind of where I started, and now I'm a human factors engineer, which is crazy because, you know, it's kind of your first job and starting point, and then kind of like, oh yeah, you're the subject matter expert in the room. So it's been really fun. Since doing that, I still do some research, but now I'm kind of in that program work, so I get to do jet testing, which is like integrated work, and working with astronauts and working with different teams that make all of that happen. So it's a really interesting point, and I can't wait to see you guys get to this point. But yeah, that's me.
I'm Vutpakdi. I am a design principal at Exxon Mobil, which is sort of across the street from HP. And we kind of go in the other direction from space. We go down most of our work. And I've spent most of my career in the oil industry. I got a master's in computer science from RISE and went to work as a software developer at the company now known as SLB, but at that time it was Schlumberger. And over the course of about 6 years, I found myself doing more and more with interaction design, with usability, and so I transitioned in that direction. I went out of the oil industry for about 2.5 years, and then came back to join Halliburton for 19 years, where I spent 11 years as an internal consultant, working kind of across their commercial software arm, and then spent 7 years or so as a UX manager for a part of Halliburton. About 7 years ago, I joined Exxon Mobil, and I've been there since. I've had different roles at Exxon Mobil, all related to UX. In essence, I've had the role when I started, and this is the role I have now, which is other duties as required. That you might see in the job description. That's my job description, is other duties as required. I start new projects, I work on projects that fall in between other teams. I handle quite a bit of the recruiting for contractors. I lead the recruiting for UX at the University of Texas, and I've led the recruiting for all of information technology at Georgia Tech. So if you have questions about resumes, portfolios, applying for UX jobs, I'm happy to field those. I do, when I'm doing project work, I do a mix of design and research, but I've also built a team from 2 to 10 people, built and led a team for 2 to 10 people when I was doing more of a team lead role. So, all right.
All right, so now we're going to open up to the audience. Ask your questions. If you have a specific question for a specific person, say so. But otherwise, I will assume that questions are for the general panel. We'll allow the panel to hop in as they will. We'll kind of keep it organic. If you don't have much to say, that's fine. We'll kind of let it go into the background, and we'll take the next question. So, who wants to be the first one?
Question for Raquel, actually. You said that you don't recommend going from industry into academia. Is there a reason why you said that?
Because it's really hard to do. And so it's because many of the attributes that are required for an academic job are generally not attributes that you can build as an industrial practitioner. And so when you come in, they expect that you will still be publishing, that you'll still be, that you're doing the things that you would do to advance an academic career. And certainly, even at AT&T, which was a research arm, we were prohibited from publishing most of the work because it fell under, NDA. And so, it's exceedingly difficult to do. It's not impossible, but I can count on one hand the number of folks that I know who've been successful going in that direction. There's lots of folks who come into academics and either hate it and want to leave, or don't get tenure, or get tenure and decide they don't want to put up with academics anymore and go out into industry. And those folks are snapped up just like that, because industry wants people who have the statistical skills, the analytic skills, the research skills. And so it's super easy to go in that direction. But if you go out and you're not publishing 4 or 5 or 6 a year in industry, which is super hard to do, then when you come in, right, and I've been out 17 years when I came to Rice. So it's very difficult to go in that direction. Yeah. If you can, it's great. It's been the best move I ever made. But it's exceedingly difficult.
That doesn't mean there are not jobs out there where you can publish, though. NASA positions, there are many where you can still publish. And there's a lot of academic research centers now. There's a lot of places that support independent HF research. Places like driving simulators, like the NADS, they have a team of HF people that do research, and they get funded by grants, but they don't teach, and they publish their research. And there's lots of different companies out there that will publish their stuff. I think the driving industry, they do a lot. I think about a lot of the trust and AV stuff. There are lots of folks that are still doing it. So you can find it, you just have to actively look for it.
And I think there should be more folks who do that. Because certainly, and those of you who are in my classes know this, I bring to bear a lot of my experience in my teaching, right? And so I think if you come straight out of school and then go straight into academia, you're missing a big chunk of, particularly if you're training, like if you're in a physics lab, you're going to be training academic physicists, and so it makes sense. But 99% of the folks I'm training are going to go out into industry. And so it seems disingenuous for me not to be able to at least say something about that. So I think more folks need to swim against the stream like that. But again, at this point, I still recommend if you think you want to be an academic, you should be an academic first. And then you can always easily, trivially go back into industry. But yeah.
Next question.
This is also for Phil. If we're still choosing if we want to go in either industry or academia, what are some things we should consider? What made you go into industry first, but ultimately choose academia as the best choice?
Sure, that's a great question. For me, I went into industry because when I finished my bachelor's degree, I was done. I was just, I had a tough go of it as an undergrad. All my degrees are in engineering, and I had just finished an engineering program and made it out with my life, and I was like, I'm so done. And so I went into industry, and industry was awesome. The first place I worked was a vertically integrated facility that did everything, and so I was able to learn all kinds of stuff. But within the first year, I looked around me and I said, who's doing what I want to do in 5 or 10 years? Where do I want to be? And I looked at the folks who were doing the work that I wanted to be doing in 10 years, and they all had PhDs. And so at that point, then that very first year, I went and took the GRE, I got into grad school and worked at the same time, and then had an opportunity to jump into a PhD program, and I said, yep, that's what I want to do. And so it was a matter of, you should never go into grad school if you're not ready for it. Mentally, I don't mean academically, I mean mentally, because it's a 5 or 6 year endurance test that's really, really hard. Right? So you want to make sure that when you enter into the program, you say, this is something I really want to do. Ian can attest to that.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I have a question for you too.
Non-adult question next, please.
Bouncing off of that, do you feel like working in academia has given you like a better work-life balance in comparison to industry?
No. It's kind of funny because when I was at AT&T Labs, it was an early day, but at 5 o'clock, you pretty much punched out, and not punched out, but you could go home and do your thing. In academia, the problem is I'm self-scheduling everything, and because most folks who are in academia are reasonably type A, we schedule, right? The work never ends. And so I'll leave here, not tonight, but typically I'll leave here at 6 or 6:30. I'll get home, I'll have dinner with my family, and then after I get the kids to bed, then I work for a couple hours. And then I'm up at 5:30, I do my walk, I work for an hour, and then I come into work, right? And it's because it's all my stuff. It's my papers, it's my classes, it's my research, it's my grants. It's, nobody's beating me with a stick saying, get this done. It's all directed from internal. And so I still have a great work-life balance. If I need to take Wednesday off, I just say, take Wednesday. I've had it with all you guys. And so that's nice, but there's still this drive to do as much as you can, to make as much impact as you can. So I think there is work-life balance. I don't think I'm as good at it as I should be, for sure.
Which I'll add, that's true for industry too, not to discount anything Phil said, right? I think that's really true, but for industry, you can be the type that clocks in and out, but there's also tons of people that just kill themselves, with their own work as well. So it's, it happens on both sides.
It also depends on the company too.
Yeah.
So some companies are very much okay. It's basically about 40 hours a week. That's it. Other companies, 60, 70, 80, more.
Time of year, it can ebb and flow. See that a lot.
Hey, this question for Ron or anyone else who's been involved in like a talent acquisition or hiring process. What are some kind of skills or attributes that really good candidates have had that are, I'll call them intangibles, that you can't necessarily put on a resume? Or are there really no intangibles and you should be able to put everything on a resume?
It's not necessarily the resume itself. It's having essentially the ability to tell a good story. Tell a good story about yourself. That's partly on the resume, it's partly elsewhere. But what have you done in your life that is relatable to what I need? So if, for example, if I need someone who can work or be able to handle difficult stakeholders. What have you done on a team or on a group project that demonstrates that ability? And being able to tell that story well, I think that's something that you can't put on a resume, except you can tell that story a little bit through some of those things that you can put on a resume, but more importantly, when you talk to people. And it's also knowing that it's essentially relating to people and who you know and how you relate to that person that'll probably get you in the end, whether it's a quick communication at a career fair or an event like this. You're more likely to get a job through those things than applying to 300 LinkedIn posts. Hiring, you know.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much more to add on. I don't think I have my thoughts organized well enough to answer that well. But I mean, there definitely are lots of things that, like dealing with difficult stakeholders or stuff that sticks out in my mind, or the soft skills of, maybe this just is specific to me and my team because we're kind of a specific type. But when I hire someone and they're good with people and fill that gap, it's really a boon to us. And so, that's not something you can put on a resume, like getting people on your team. So a lot of stuff that pops up is like, in industry, we work for an organization and they may disagree with another organization, but like we own the data, so what we say goes, and then they get their data and then we fight about what our data says, right? And so if you can have someone that is working for you, or if you can have this yourself, that somebody that can help smooth those things over and is good with working on teams, and teams that tend to disagree and argue, but they can reach out and make friends, and that's a better way to work than we tend to be upset with each other. So skills like that, I would say, are stuff that sticks out in my mind. That it's not really, I don't know how to put that on a resume, but that sticks out to me.
At AT&T, we had obviously we were looking for PhD folks who had really good technical skills, but we always did what we call the CUBE test, and the CUBE test was, is this a colleague that we'd want to come and have sit in our office and talk to us about science, about projects, about things like that. And the CUBE test held great sway. We'd have people who were technically amazing, and people would say, this person doesn't pass the CUBE test, and we would hire them because the social skills were this huge element of how you get a job done. And so it doesn't really show up on a resume, but it does show up when you're talking to the interviewer.
Good question.
I have two questions, one related to a prior topic we were talking about. Can you guys talk about typical work hours in your own company for HR folks? And my second question is, there's a lot of advocacy work that needs to be done sometimes when you're either interacting with clients, whether that's within your own company. I know Eric pointed that out a little bit, like there's education work there. Can you guys share with us an example where you effectively educated someone and got someone on board with kind of the evidence you were collecting, or on board with your recommendations?
So I'll start at least with the easy question, right? So at Exxon Mobil, a lot of it depends on the role, but on the upstream user experience team, we work roughly 40, 45 hours a week. The actual hours vary. I come in at 7, leave at 4. Other people will come in at 8, leave at 5. It just kind of varies. We have also flexibility in terms of if I've got a call at 7 a.m. in the morning, I might take that from home and then come in later. So there's a lot of room for flexibility there. So actually, why don't we answer that question first and then?
Yeah, so with what I do at JSC, it also flows. Definitely time of year, maybe we have more projects going on, we have a lot of testing to do. We might go a little bit over that 40 hours a week. But our work is hybrid, so we do hybrid work. I can come in I come in 3 days a week, I'm home 2 days a week. And then we'll do like every other Friday's off. So we'll have like 9-hour days. So it's a little bit different in that. As long as your work is done, that's what everyone really cares about, is getting the work done. But your priority, if you work better at home and you don't have any face-to-face meetings a day, you're not doing research, no one really has a problem with you doing that. They would rather you be productive and be comfortable, and you're trusted to do your job. So that is that perspective.
So because we're a consulting company, so we subcontract with these companies. So I usually work 8 to 4, but granted they're an Axiom space. So for example, they're essentially a startup space company. So they have a lot of people working 9 to 6, 9 to 7. And so it just kind of ebbs and flows like we've said. Sometimes, my schedule is 8 to 4 and I came in at 8 and I worked through my lunch and I was gonna leave at 4. But now I have one of these subsystem teams that wants to meet at 4:30 just because that's when they're available. So just being flexible. So some days look longer than others. You'll hear what's called, so they do agile sprints. So they're trying to meet their deadlines before the end of the year or by the end of their sprint. So that's sometimes we have to pick up and work, 45 or X amount, pick up more, do more than 40. But it just depends. For us, we're usually busy, really busy, during the holidays, end of the year, just because everyone wants to get everything done by the end of the year before they go out. Yeah, but
So I think I came down a little maybe too hard about, I do work 50 or 60 hours a week, but I have 6 kids, and my wife is a prominent scientist here at Rice as well, and I have enough time in my life to deal with my 6 kids and still do all my work. And so if there's flexibility in how you spread those hours out, I think that's the big thing.
At HP, especially in the design org, nobody is tracking hours. Nobody cares what you work. There's so much work to do that it's more about getting your job done. And so how you do it is completely up to you. The designers. So we work with people in Asia because it's where they're building products, and so there's a lot of night calls. So the designers generally they come in between 9 and 10, and they work and stay late, and then work into the night. I prefer to work. I get in at 7:30, and then leave at 4 because that's what works best for traffic. I hate spending time in traffic. But I work 40 to 45 hours a week. If there's a fire drill and we have to do an emergency study because something is wrong with the product that's about to ship, that's a longer day or a longer couple days. But we're just really trusted to do our job, and nobody's tracking that or caring at all about it. But me personally, for my team, I'm a big advocate of work is just work. It's what we do to do the things that we really enjoy. Some people may view that differently, right? Some people live for their work, and that's fine too, but that's not me, and that's not what I try to say for my team, is that, we're here to then go live our lives, and so that's very important for me and what I try to tell my team. So when I work, sometimes I, work less than 8 hours a day. I try to work a good 8 hours a day, But when I'm at work, and I'm working hard, solid. And when I clock out, I try to clock out. So it's personally how I do it. And then the second question, could you phrase it again? Maybe I can jump in.
Can you share with us an instance where perhaps someone was hesitant to integrate HF into their workflow, and you got them on board with either doing the research or your recommendations for the research you've already done?
I have some thoughts. Let me jump in real quick. I don't have any good examples, but something that definitely stands out there that I've learned and I see people come in on my team and learn. We tend to be numbers people, right? We know statistics, and virtually no one else speaks that language. And so we come in, people come in and write these reports, and they're these long, 30, 40 page documents and all these reports, and, especially the product planning people or engineers tend to like that a little bit, but you'll find people that you work with that especially designers. The designers we work with are extremely visual people and extremely just tell me what I need to know and how I need to change my product. That's all I care about. And And so tuning what your message is to the audience that you're speaking to is what's really important. So I can't think of any good examples, but that immediately came to my mind of like, if you're talking to product planning people, then you need to talk cost and schedule. If you're talking to designers, you need to show pictures that's about it. Show pictures, give them how it's going to affect their design. That's all they care about. Engineering, you can get into the weeds a little bit, but you kind of, that's something you learn in industry, is like who you're working with and what teams like different things. But you want to try to tune your message to that because it's going to be different for every person.
I have a great story about bringing a part of a company on. So the way it worked is AT&T Labs served as sort of a consultant to all the other firms. And so one of the firms came to us 2 days before product launch and said, hey, can you sprinkle some human factors pixie dust on our system and make it good? And we looked at it and said, oh my God, you built this? And so we said, no, there's nothing you can do because it was locked. But we can help you figure out what your support costs are going to look like on day one. And they said, this is great. We're going to have 50 operators standing by, ready. And so we did a series of cognitive walkthroughs and some other little quick, super fast tests, and then estimated how many folks they were going to need on the back end for call volume. And so we said, you're going to receive X number of calls. And worse than that, you're going to receive at least 2 calls per product purchase. People are going to have to call you at least twice, more likely 3 times. And so we had these estimates. And the president said, no way, this is not happening. Day one came and our estimates were spot on. Because the cognitive walkthroughs told us exactly where the product was going to fail. And so all of a sudden their president was like, I don't want to start any product development process unless human factors is on board. These guys have crystal balls and they can see what's happening. And so we could have just said, you guys are insane, get out of our office, don't ever come back if you're going to bring us stuff 2 days before launch. But instead we turned it into an opportunity to evangelize and say, we do know some stuff, and by virtue of doing a really good job at predicting their support costs based on standard human factors principles, that company then said, oh my gosh, we understand now what you guys can do for us. And so that weird way to evangelize was an important thing for the company.
So not a specific example, but like when we've done medical devices, so the idea is the medical device companies that come to us, they know they need human factors in order to get FDA clearance. But just because they know they need it doesn't mean they're like super accepting to it. So ideally, you want to start human factors right from product, like conception, right? You haven't even designed it, you're starting it from the idea all the way to the mock-up. But a lot of the time, these companies come to us and they're already in clinical trials. They're high fidelity mock-ups. And so then, we're coming in and we're just giving them our HF initial assessment, and we're pointing out all these possible errors and all these kind of tweaks that they could make, and they're like, okay, well, how is that impacting our scale? Okay, like, can we cut this, and instead of doing, so they need to do like a formative testing, which is like iterative testing. Can we just skip that and go straight to validation, just kind of let us tweak it here. So it's just a matter of those soft skills of, knowing how to talk to people, who you're talking to, right, your project managers, letting them know that, this might set your schedule back a little bit, but it's going to save you from putting a product out in the market that's going to you're going to have to recall it and waste more money fixing it all up. So even the companies that are like the industries that they know they need you, it just takes like soft skills to kind of reach out and talk to them and kind of massage, the need for HF in there.
So I'll have to sanitize quite a bit of the example, but I had a researcher on my team who did some research and essentially helped kill a product from releasing because she was able to show that, look, it's just a bad idea. People are not going to be able to use this very well. But because she did that, she had a lot of credibility when she was asked to come and we know the products we're going to choose. It's down to these last 2. Just come and help us advise on usability testing. Well, she came in and she's helped convince them that, okay, look, you guys don't actually know what's important here. And are you really sure that you want to select between these two products when you've got 47 stakeholders who don't agree on what they want and what this product's supposed to do? So she was able to convince them because of her previous experience, the credibility she had gained. And that product has ended up saving a significant amount of money for the company because they were able to ask the right questions, to choose the right products, to have the right decision criteria on which product to choose. So.
I don't have a nice story in my pocket, but I will reaffirm, I think, a recurring theme here, which is those soft skills, communication skills, being able to convey to people. I don't know, any of you guys have done debate, right? I'm a recent convert to debate. But being able to make a claim, provide evidence, provide the impact or potential impact is great, especially when you can do those things like a cognitive walkthrough and you demonstrate, hey, you know, we looked at potential users and they can't use this. And it's really impactful when you go to individuals to do that. Yeah. And being able to do it in a respectful way that makes sense to who you're talking to, knowing that if you're talking to an engineer or knowing you're talking to C-suite or whomever, being able to convey that in a language that they're going to understand, using evidence and an impact that's going to speak to them is important. And you will learn those eventually. I'm learning that. But I think that's really good, being able to talk to people. It's a big skill that you guys should develop.
And just to add one thing, knowing the experts to tap into to be able to convert what you're doing, your findings, to the language that you need to be is an important part. I work at NASA as well, and money talks across all industries, but NASA is very safety oriented, very much about preventing errors, reducing error rates, and a failure in orbit is not only money, but it's people's lives. And it's also, there's a lot riding on it because space is one of those things that we have a lot of idealistic views about. So being able to put HF findings into a language that your stakeholders understand is one of the big things. And sometimes you don't know what that language is. So consulting experts that can translate for you is a really big part of that. Next question.
Hi, I'm AJ, and this question is for Vanessa. Vanessa. My lab mate is named Nessa, and so I got confused.
I'll answer, it's okay.
Yeah. So, in hearing your story, I found that we had a lot of things in common. And I really appreciated how you mentioned that you were a first-generation student, because so am I. And so, one of the things that I find as a first-generation student is that we have really unique challenges. One being like lack of resources, lack of finances, lack of mentors. And so my question to you is, as a first-generation student, what's the biggest challenge that you faced? And then second question to that is, what advice would you give to other first-generation students too who may be in this room as well?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're here. Anyone else? I'm also glad you're here. Will to carry on and finances to carry on were the biggest ones, right? I will say a lot of it is I couldn't have done this without people willing to help. There's so many people in this room, like 4 people in this room, who I couldn't have gotten to this point without them. At least 5 more I can name that aren't in this room that I couldn't have done it without them. So finding people that are willing to answer your questions, like Hannah helped me with all these answers with UHCL and moving down here and early career and with the program and just moving around Houston. And I had great help at end to end with learning methods and even at my internship with Ian. And there's so many, finding and maintaining the motivation, identifying what you want to do, but really the motivation and the funds. And I think a lot of times it's kind of an unspoken thing. People don't like to talk about money. They don't like to talk about that they're suffering, that they maybe are going to have to drop out because they can't. I actually didn't mention this earlier, so thanks for giving this opportunity. That I actually had to take a year off between undergrad and grad school. I almost didn't come back, but I had a fantastic mentor at my undergrad, and then even Dr. Kelling before I moved down here was great at reaching out as well and letting me know the opportunity is still there, that you can still make it. Help identify, okay, well, what are the insurmountables and how can we bridge that gap to you? For me, like an undergrad, I worked 40 to 60 hours a week, and that was with overloading classes and killed my GPA and killed myself. Like it was rough. And in grad school, I decided I really couldn't do that anymore. So my answer to that was to take out loans, which is something I was scared of in undergrad. So being able to kind of hear from others that, okay, this is a stable career field. You can make money at this. You're going to be able to get a job. It kind of alleviates some of that. But building a network, I'd say building a network is good. Being open and honest with those uncomfortable things of like, hey, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how to network. I don't know how to build a resume. I don't know how to make a LinkedIn. I don't know what a job fair is. I don't know how to interview because your parents can't help you with that. It really helps you. But you guys have already made it to such a great point. But it's just continuing to push yourself, continuing to question, being open and honest. Maybe sometimes when it's embarrassing that like, hey, I'm worried about, I know I should be taking an internship, but it's not paid. Like I'm gonna have to take a job instead. So being open and honest, and hopefully you have great mentors. Hopefully you build a good network. This is a great community of people. I've not met anyone that wasn't completely willing to stop and take 15 minutes to answer a question or concern I have. So I hope that continues to be the case for you. But I didn't mention this earlier. I kind of blacked out. I don't really actually remember what I said earlier. But I did a lot of research, but I also did like 3 internships while I was at UHCL, which very fortunate to have those opportunities. But like I went to end to end, and I learned a lot of great quantitative and qualitative methods there, and I found out like a lot of cool things I could do with that, and I took those everywhere else I've been. I did a birding research study at the Environmental Institute of Houston. It was fun though. And then I of course did KBR, and I did some internships. So staying hungry, being open to opportunities, meeting people, making friends, that's all networking is. So hopefully that answered a little bit of that. But learning a lot of it, especially first generation, especially if finances are a concern, learning how to manage your finances will help a lot of providing security. And then being open and honest about what you need. Yeah, hopefully that helped.
Is everybody else, is anybody else first generation student?
Yeah, I am. But I mean, same thing, sir. Yeah, so first generation. I mean, my parents are first. Well, I'm like a first generation here. My parents are immigrants, so it was even like harder, I guess. But going to get my bachelor's and my master's, first one. My parents didn't know English, so just kind of like she said, being honest with what you know. Don't compare yourself to others. I had a friend. Well, she's still my friend, but I still have her as a friend. But so we went to a bachelor's at UHCL, and then we did the master's at the same time, UHCL. And so it would at times just be easy to like kind of compare myself. Oh, like she's doing all this research. Oh, she's going to get an internship. And it's easy to kind of fall and start comparing yourself to others. But, you just kind of have to take a step back and realize, I think like Eric said, everyone's journey looks different. As a first generation, it's going to be a bit tougher, just because we don't have, I couldn't go to my parents with regards to how to make my resume, tips on like interviews. And so just kind of like Vanessa said, I think she really hit it spot on, being really, continuing to be hungry, but at the same time being open and honest to what you don't know. Because you don't know what you don't know. So it doesn't hurt to say, I don't know how to network or, stuff like that.
I have a question on transitioning from like being an intern to early career to like becoming maybe like a subject matter expert. I feel like sometimes building that confidence and like being confident in knowing what you're doing and presenting that to people can sometimes be intimidating. And so I was curious on your guys' journey, like you just transitioned to now being early career, and so like how has that transition been? And for other people, when you were considered for the first time the subject matter expert, like how did that feel, and how did you overcome becoming confident enough for that?
I'm interested in that too. Does anyone have
So I can go. So I think you'll hear a lot of like imposter syndrome. I definitely felt that. Still feel that at times. I think I'm just really barely starting to feel comfortable with like, like I'm a senior. I've been an HF specialist, for going on 5 years now. But it's easy to get like that imposter syndrome, I don't know, it's just hard. But I think you just have to be confident. It takes a lot. So just being confident and what you know, right? You went to school for human factors or UX, whatever concentration, human-centered design. You've applied it in school. Now you've in your internship, you've been under someone's wing, you've been mentored, you've applied it through there. and just kind of, like we said, being confident in that you know your human factors principles. You're like the studies that you do, the recommendations that you're making them for the better of the hardware, for the better of the software, to improve people's lives, mitigate any or design out any errors, improve what people can do good. So it's a lot of self-reflecting, probably. It was a lot, at least for me, a lot of self-reflecting and being, you know what I do? I am a human factor specialist. I do know what I'm doing. And just kind of going in confident and saying, yeah, I'm your subject matter expert. I'm your, I'm your point of contact for human factors. So yes, feel free to reach out to me. If at any point I felt like what I didn't know, just kind of being acknowledged of that also, hey, I don't know the requirements for this specific system, so I'm going to go and do my own research on it. So just doing your due diligence as well as accepting what you don't know and kind of taking the time to do the research and continuing to grow even outside of school.
What I try to do, question, but don't question yourself. So you can do it. You can find the answer. You made it to this point. You're going to continue to go on. You're building a toolkit, which is like something Dr. Kelly likes to say. He's like, you're building a toolkit, and then it's what you can do with that toolkit is the continuous answer. But you can do it. It's just how are you going to do that? And when you're going into things from a human factors perspective, sometimes you're working with people that are, hopefully they're excited to see you. Sometimes they're not excited to see you. But then kind of reframing that against those soft skills of it's not me against you, it's us against the problem, kind of helps that as well. But yeah, it's kind of jarring the first time. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it. The first time I was just in my first meeting that someone was like, Vanessa, you're our human factors subject matter expert. And I was like, yeah, I guess I am. But it was great because I immediately had an answer, which felt great for me. So, does anyone else?
I don't know if the imposter syndrome ever quite completely goes away. There was a session at the recent UXBA conference, and the person I sat next to had been in the industry for 30 years. She was honored at this UXBA conference for her lifetime contribution, and she was sitting next to me in the I'm an imposter session. So I think that it's this weird balance of having confidence in yourself, but also being humble and knowing that you don't know everything. There was always something to learn, and it's that weird balance. So.
And if you're lucky, you're going to surround yourself with people who are better than you, right? And so. Every time, I've been in the business now for almost 40 years, and every time I go to Human Factors, I walk away having talked to a bunch of people who are 20 times smarter than me, who have all these ideas, who have thought of things for my research that I've been thinking about for years, and I talk to them for 5 minutes, and they go, oh, did you think about that? Have you thought about this? Could you do this design? I'm like, oh my God, right? How did you come up with that? And so, and honestly, it's one of the best things is because if you listen, right, you're going to collect all this information. But then, I think Ron's right, you have to step back and say, I am still an expert, I still can contribute in important ways, but I have to be open to the fact that there's always going to be people who are better, smarter, faster than I am, and I can learn from that and keep adding to my toolkit. But Ron's right, even folks who have been in the business forever, almost always have the imposter syndrome. And honestly, the ones who don't, oftentimes have lost some of the social skills. Right?
I want to make it quick, but just a couple thoughts. Imposter syndrome, totally real. I want to echo the sincerity and honesty that maybe that's a thing for me personally, but that goes a long way. If you don't know something or you need help with something, like if you come and say, I need help or I don't know this, like that speaks so much more than, not doing that. I don't know what the inverse would be, but that goes a long way. And failure is okay, failure is good. Early in your career, you're going to fail, and that's how you learn. And so embrace failure and learn from it. Don't be super scared of failure. And just, this may be more anecdotal, but for me personally, I'm naturally introverted and withdrawn and quiet, and I'm not going to take charge of stuff by nature. But if I'm put in a position, a leadership position, that brings that out of me and that gives me confidence. And so maybe seek out those things, or don't be afraid to be elected, to be put in something, because that connects the dots for me in my head. So.
Next question.
Okay, so hi, my name is Nilda. First, I just want to say that it's really reassuring as a first-gen student as well to have you guys just stand there and speak about your story. So I am someone who never really considered like post-grad until now that I'm discovering that I'm interested in human factors. So did you have any experiences in your undergraduate experience or opportunities that made you realize that you did want to go into human factors, or did you ever feel forced to go pursue a higher degree to kind of really do what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah, I majored in psychology, so I kind of had to do something else, right? Yeah, I kind of fell face first into it. I originally wanted to do engineering as well, and then changed my major quick because of some other issues, and then went to business, and then went to human factors, kind of fell face first. And I was in business, had a terrible class, like ran into the closest department, and was like, I'm just gonna change my major. And there was a psychology department, and I went, the person whose room I ended up in was the department chair, psychology, ended up being my research mentor. So I'm glad you found it. Yeah, I don't really I learned about it, and he was like, well, this is kind of a branch of it. I have a lab if you would like to do that and you want to get research experience, because he was like, he at least told me early, which was great. And a lot of first-gen students aren't told what you have to do to make it to grad school. You get to the end of grad school and you're like, I mean, you get to the end of your undergrad and you're kind of told, especially first-gen students, you're like, oh, well, you need to go to grad school if you want to do ABC, but you're like, well, I didn't do internships, I didn't do research. My GPA suffered because I had to work all throughout school, and then I've never heard of the GRE, so I have to study for that right now. And so, you know, there's all of those boundaries that exist there. But so luckily I fell into that. But it was so cool, and there's all this research, and I actually found I changed in that first year. There was like an intro class to all the careers that existed in human factors, and I actually found this notebook. I was moving a couple months ago, and it was my sophomore year notebook, and it was like possible careers, and it was NASA, underlined and question marked. So it was kind of crazy. I called the professor up and was like crying, and I was like, it's crazy. But yeah, so that was kind of, it's just a lot of great things that you can do with human factors, and so many possibilities, like the range of careers that are here just in Houston. But
yeah, I agree with Vanessa. So doing my bachelor's in psychology, you know, I wanted to get a career that I could make a good living out of, and so I was like, well, if I do psychology and bachelor's, I have to get my master's to do something, to gain something. And so I was really lucky to kind of like that last year of my bachelor's learn about human factors program at UHCL, and so I was like, oh, this is convenient, I don't even have to move, I can just stay here. But yeah, so I chose, I've always wanted to help people. I kind of wanted to go into healthcare before, but I realized that I'm not good with blood and wounds, and so I was like, I don't want to help people that way. And so then I kind of learned more about human factors, and, you know, and at its core, you know, the ability of being able to improve products and stuff, mitigating, designing out any errors, you know, optimizing what people do well. I'd looked into industrial organizational psychology too, but I took one class and I was like, oh, this isn't really for me. So human factors just kind of fit that, wanting to help people without getting too hands-on into the blood and guts and all of it, but still making an impact, so.
the Iron Man movie, like the heads-up displays, once I found out that was a human factors thing, I was like, oh, cool, sign me up, because I loved that movie as a kid.
I have two questions, and this is for the panelists. One of them is, from your guys' experience, is the job market shrinking or is it expanding? And then the second question is, what does a career path look like for a human factor position in the industry? And if you guys are comfortable, what's the salary growth look like over the years?
Three questions then.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
So at least on I can't speak for more the human factor side, but for the UX side right now, it's a very tough market because a number of companies have overexpanded and overhired, and there's also a number of boot camps right now. They're overpromising and under-delivering because they really don't teach as much as, let's say, a larger program will. So it's very tough right now for UX grads, and so, but I think it will turn around as well. So I'll answer one question at a time.
I think there's a lot of financial market pressures that are limiting growth in pretty much any career. I think that's also affecting human factors and as well as UX. My cohort, our graduation, UHCL, and any of the alumni in the room can correct me on this, but I've heard that people usually graduate pretty easily being able to get, it was hard to find positions for my cohort. I was the only one that was committed to a job like at graduation. So but they all have jobs now. It's a couple months out. Like everyone was employed within a couple of months, so that's a good sign, right? But yeah, so there's a lot of global financial pressures that are pressing on that.
Yeah, I'll say I think it's easier. Well, the job market might be a bit better for human factors specialists. I know it is tough for UX. We had someone recently hired on at Sophic who previously had worked a UX research role, but instead of switching that and doing more human factors and applying for those human factors roles, he was able to find a job easier and faster versus a UX role. And he knows a lot of people that are still trying to apply for the UX role. And I guess salary-wise, I've applied to other jobs here and there. I've gotten good offers, anywhere from like 85K plus. So once you do get a job in industry, it's pretty good job offers in my experience.
If the number of postings at the Human Factors Conference job fair is any indication, as human factors people, the job market is burgeoning. There's just more jobs now than we've had in the last 5 to 7 years. And so, and that's true across the board at entry-level human factors jobs and faculty positions. There are more faculty positions posted this year than there have been in the last 10 years. And so, at that end of the specialization, away from UX, the market is really strong. And so,
I haven't looked for a job in a while, so I'm happy where I'm at. I should maybe know the job market better because I do hire, but I don't know. So I'm on the other side of it, I guess. But, which, let me quickly shamelessly plug that we have an internship for next semester. I need to figure out a way to distribute that, but add me on LinkedIn, maybe I'll post it or something, but I would love to look at filling that. But yeah, so I don't think I have many comments specifically. The UX thing, so I'm in an HF role, but nobody at my company really knows what that is. UX is a buzzword, and nobody really knows what that is either. But there's like a bunch of UX teams that pop up, and I'm always I never know where those people come from and what their qualifications are. So I'm kind of hard-nosed that way. Like I think that you should have specific training and to do these things, and you have a specific skill set. I don't know if that's justified or not. I don't know if it doesn't about that. But I have noticed UX is a kind of a different thing. I've seen these teams bring on people for UX roles that have like an MBA, and they just always leave because it's like they don't know how to make meaningful change or communicate it or whatever. So I do think that we have a specific skill set that is unique.
Getting on to that, it's important to look at not just the job title, because job titles can be somewhat empty and meaningless. HF and UX are often used interchangeably. Look at the skills that they require. And I think the second thing I heard from a lot of people finding jobs right now, apply for jobs even if they say it requires 5 years, because there's a lot of companies that will just tack that on. Advocate for yourself. Just throw it out there. It doesn't matter. Apply. A lot of those jobs want the experienced people, but they will hire people without experience. So don't be afraid just because you're not qualified for a job. This is one of those interesting studies that has come out of looking at the gender gaps between males and females. Men will just apply for anything, and that's why they're often successful for finding jobs. So don't be afraid just to apply for something. Even if you can get your foot in the door, that's what you need, because once you get to the interviewing stage, your success rates for a job application go up tremendously. So Don't pay attention to the job title, pay attention to the job content, look at the skills. If you can learn those skills, one of the number one things you're learning in a school is you're learning to teach yourself what you need to know and how to get that information. So even if you don't know something, you can teach. If you can teach it to yourself, do it. And then or you can say, I saw that you were hiring for this. I don't have these skills, but I'm learning them. I'm taking a Udemy course, or I'm taking a Coursera course on how to do it. Show that you are willing to do the work, because that's what companies are looking for. So.
Thank you. Those are all great advice. Thank you so much.
For the pay thing, my cohort, it depends what you're going to go into, right? If you're going to go to UX, if you're going to do human factors, what industry you're going to go into. Our starting salaries were like 70, 80, 90. So that was our starting range.
So something to consider about the starting salary is what is the cost of living about where you're staying. Because we had some students who we made an offer to, and they went and took a job because it was paying more, but they were going to go live in New York City. And it's like, oh, have you really compared the cost of living? Because your take home is going to be less, but okay.
So I'm an industrial designer. I'm very much interested in the field of human factors. How would an industrial designer do in that field?
What do you do? What do you know?
What do I do as an industrial designer?
Yeah.
I do have my own consultancy, and I also have a product-based startup, which is an exoskeleton device. But I don't have the traditional education of the human factors engineer.
I know, for me personally, I would hire an IT person for sure, or what is it called in some of the other places? Like A&M's program of the, what's that called? I'm sorry.
Industrial engineering.
No, the like workplace safety they call it or something.
Oh, public health.
Public health, yeah, public safety, public health, that stuff. I don't really care what your schooling, what your title was. If you have the skills that I need to fill a role, like I'll hire you. So my team, we're all cognitive psychologists, but one of the guys is teaching himself ergonomics, and I would have hired an ergonomist in that role, which I think would have come out of an IAB program potentially. Maybe that's more of a place safety, public health, but. Yeah, for me, it's all about what do I need to fill and what are your skills. It doesn't matter exactly where you came from.
Exoskeletons is a very niche subfield in human factors. There's a lot of people that do it, but I do think it requires a very specific knowledge. So if you can learn how to translate those skills to it, I think it is something that you could probably find a niche for. There's a lot of it happens in universities, and I know there's a lot of medical companies that are doing exoskeleton work. Military does as well, so a lot of the research labs, like the Army Research Lab and the Navy Research Labs, might be doing stuff like that too. But it's not something you find like a program doing a lot with specifically.
Very cool.
I was wondering if you guys could touch on being a contractor versus working for the government directly.
Yeah, so I'm a contractor. It depends. I think there's varying levels of, sometimes I very much feel NASA, sometimes I very much feel like a vendor. I think it depends the role that you're working, the proximity that you have to what project that you're on, which I'm not a civil servant, so I probably really can't honestly speak to that experience. But my experience so far has been very positive. I've not had a lot of concern on that. I don't know if there's someone, none of the audience, Ian, someone else wants to take that.
One of my colleagues' husband is now a NASA employee. He was started out as a contractor. And so what happened with him is that at times different companies would switch out the contracts. And so what would happen is that say it was United Space Alliance, they lost the contract and this other company picked it up. Basically all of the people that work for United Space Alliance got fired. And most of them would get picked up and have to switch over benefits and basically they're joining a new company each time. So that was sort of a downside that I've just heard about like secondhand. So.
A lot of that is changing right now too. The way that NASA used to work is very different than what it works now. There's a lot more private companies coming on and doing contract work. And so sort of the wall between who's a NASA employee and who is it's a very integrated place right now. Roles change depending on if you work directly for the government versus working as a contractor on a government contract, but often you're working side by side with the government employees directly, and there's not really, I can only speak from the aerospace side. This is probably different if you're talking about like working as like on the health and safety board or working for NIH or something like that versus that kind of contract. But at least for NASA in the aerospace industry, I see a lot of the same, people have been working there for years. Some people are rather new, and that's because the new company's coming in and doing something. And it's a very, very different world than it was even 10 years ago.
You do get the same similar sort of thing in industry, where there are ExxonMobil employees, and then there are contractors who are working for ExxonMobil. And one thing that is very important for companies like ExxonMobil, like Microsoft, because Microsoft is where it started, is contractors have to be treated differently than employees to avoid co-employment issues. The original case came out of Microsoft where someone who was a contractor was treated just like an employee, and then he sued that he was not given employee benefits. So each company handles it differently. There are advantages to being a contractor. One thing that is very important for companies like ExxonMobil, like Microsoft, because Microsoft, this is where it started, is contractors have to be treated differently than employees to avoid co-employment issues. The original case came out of Microsoft where someone who was a contractor was treated just like an employee, and then he sued that he was not given employee benefits. So each company handles it differently. There are advantages to being a contractor. For a company like ExxonMobil, where it's just 40 hours a week and 40 hours a week and 40 hours a week, there's no more. The downside is while your hourly rate will be higher, it often does not include holidays or sick time or vacation time, so that has to be factored in as to what the total cost or what your total take home is once all the benefits are considered.
And another thing you have to consider is at AT&T we had a lot of contractors come in, and we use them as buffers. And so when the work would go down, the contract staff would be let go. And so they had I think a more difficult time because they always had to be able to have another thing ready to go. And so they were always the first to be let go, and then when times got good, they were always the first to be picked back up. But that meant there were good times and bad times. And so some people are really well suited to that. They love it. I had a contractor friend who said, I hope we get laid off soon because I want to go do X. But for somebody like me, my head would explode, right? Because I want the consistency.
I did find a question. So as a PhD student, I found that obviously a lot of my academics has been towards specializing towards something within human factors. But I wonder about the balance of breadth versus depth, because there's times when I was building my resume, I didn't dabble hard enough in eye tracking. So if I want to put on my resume, how much can I talk about it? I'm curious if you could talk about your experience while you were getting hired, or while you're as you're hiring managers. How do human factors practitioners balance the breadth and depth problem in their experience and research? And what have you found to be maybe most important when they're actually on the job? Is it a breadth and understanding, well, I've done a little bit of eye tracking, or is it, no, I'm the expert in this, column?
I think a lot of it will depend on what that mix is. And what a particular role requires. It is, ExxonMobil does hire PhDs, but they tend to be in very technical fields that are core to ExxonMobil business. So we are probably not going to hire the expert eye tracker. We are going to hire someone who is super hyper specialized in looking at this particular type of rock in this particular type of rock formation, because that's what we do. Or the computational fluid dynamics specialist. So it really depends. Someone else might not be interested in that. Someone's they're looking for, like ETE might, like, okay, well, you can do eye tracking, that's great. You've got some experience, that's great. But it all depends. Again, it's kind of like, what story can you tell? And depends on where you're going, what you want to do.
And I think a lot of people misunderstand that what you do as your PhD is what you're going to do. So, a lot of folks in my lab are getting PhDs doing voting research. I don't expect any of them are going to do voting when they leave. And so what I'm equipping them to do is to have a toolkit full of human factors tools that they can use. And it doesn't really matter what the problem is, they're going to have all the tools that are necessary. That's not to say that when you get out in the real world, so when I got to AT&T, I was hired as a general human factors research specialist. But then a project came up that required expert knowledge in my domain of vision, and they said, go get Kortum, because he knows everything about the visual system. And so then I had that special project just for that. But I wasn't hired on to do that. I was hired on to do general kind of work. But I mean, you're studying medical stuff, and so the world is huge for medicine. It's about as wide as you can get.
As a quick follow-up, I've heard that the best way to sort of market yourself in the neighborhood is to be the person that people know as whether it's in the company or wherever, this is who we go to do XYZ. This is your value. This is why we can't fire you tomorrow. And I'm curious, for each of you, what would you say is your biggest strength in the we can't fire you tomorrow department? And what do you say is your greatest strength for human factors practitioners in industry?
Got some good questions. I thought about your first question this entire time. Your second question is really good too. I don't know, I need to think some more, I think.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to be the expert in something, but you have to have enough support among your boss's peers and other people in the company that will say, no, we don't want to fire Sarah because Sarah helped me on this other project and she's great on this. Oh, and she's great on this other project, so why don't we move her over here instead of firing her? I mean, yes, if you happen to be the absolute expert in this one key thing, that's great. But you can't necessarily count on that, because at some point there's going to be Fred. Fred is going to be younger, smarter, faster. It's going to happen at some point. And so it's really building this wide network of support that people will look out for you.
Yeah, I think in my experience, being able to think on your feet, so being able to know that, you can be put on different projects and maybe you don't know a lot about. So when I was put in the aerospace, my first aerospace project, I didn't really have a lot of aerospace background. So I was going into these meetings, hearing acronym after acronym, this, HLS, and this, da-da-da. And so I had to be quick in being able to pick up the acronyms, being able to know, okay, I have to do my due diligence of educating myself before I go to the teams with the meetings. And so having soft skills like that, thinking on your feet, kind of critical thinking, being a people person, right? Showing that you're invaluable to your boss, to your other coworkers, right? Being able to show that you're dependable, that you're someone that's always out there to help, mentoring, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, those are what I thought of eventually. Is that I don't know that it's much so I have a master's degree. I don't have a PhD. I didn't have a specialty. I didn't do a ton of research. I have research experience, but I didn't develop an expertise or an area of research or anything. And our research at HP is just, you know, we make so many products and it's just so varied that it's more the skill set that you have. And so that's what I look for in somebody, is, you know, if they've done a keyboard study in the past, I'm like, oh my God, they studied a keyboard before? Like, you know, get them in. But it's more about like the skills that they have and methodology that they can use. But for me personally, about what I think, looking back on my career, what has helped me get in my position is, I think it's more of the soft skill type stuff, and it's not the domain specific stuff, but it's just like, I feel like I fell into, I didn't go after trying to be in my position, I just showed up and wanted to work hard every day and then go home and do what I wanted to do, right? But the thing looking back, I think what resonated with my management is that I was the same every day. Like, designers can be very emotional people that spike, but I came in and I did the same thing every day, and they liked that kind of level setness. And I was loyal to my management, and that's big for my GM. Like, that speaks volumes. And there's one more thing I was going to say. I just blanked on it. So I guess it wasn't important.
I think except in very specialized environments, and this is kind of a paradox, the people who are going to end up firing you won't know about your specific skill set. And so unless you're on like this super critical path, you're the only guy who knows how to turn this button. And oftentimes they won't figure that out until they fire you anyway. And so I think one of the best things you can do is you can build success stories. And so you want to be known as the person who is always successful. Like, oh, every project that this person touches seems to go well. Or have and I think this goes back to the soft skills. At Raquel, we went through this horrible layoff. And a lot of my peers who were technically really, really good lost their jobs. But one of my colleagues didn't. And it's because he had a reputation as a fixer. He could go in and fix any one of these problems that would pop up. And so he wasn't as technically strong as some of the other folks they left, but his doggedness in solving problems was well known. And so having success stories in that way makes you more visible to management in a way that can protect you.
And that's very similar to what I was going to say, if I can remember it, is that this is something I realized becoming a manager, but your manager will love you if you can make their job easier. So kind of think of it that way. Like, when you start a job, when you start having a manager, don't think about like, what do I have to do? What is he telling me to do? He or she telling me to do? What do they, X, Y, Z? Look for opportunities that are like, they're busy, and like, what can I take off their plate for them? They took notes, they had to do this, say, hey, I'll take that for you. Like, that type of stuff. I love that as a manager. So.
Being willing to learn, being nice to work with. I hope. I'm trying. I'll find out and I'll let you know, I guess.
All right, we have gone past the 8 o'clock mark, so I think we're going to cut it off there. But a couple sentences of advice for anybody looking for a job or thinking about jumping into the career in the next year. Just can you leave them with some parting wisdom? Everybody, what's your wisdom in a nutshell for the audience?
So this has nothing to do with finding a job. There's a podcast called Career Tools. It's put on by the Manager Tools folks. It's a podcast all around how to be successful as a professional in your career. There's a podcast for pretty much everything. Business travel. Is it normal to request time off? Or all these other topics that will be very helpful once you're actually working. Just find that podcast. You can search for topics, resume preparation, all sorts of topics. That's probably my number one suggestion that I have.
Thank you.
The other thing, just second one, again, not related to work. There is a book called The Index Card. This is everything you need to learn about personal finance can be written on an index card. Okay, so there's a book about it, but that's beside the point. The original idea is that you can write everything you needed to learn on a 3x5 index card. So it's really helpful once you start making money.
Be a good human, be nice to everyone that you can be nice to, make friends in your network. You've gotten great advice, give great advice. If you have someone that reaches out to you that has a question, try to take the time to answer it. Paying that forward is huge in human factor. It's a small community. I think that's the best advice I received right in the door. It's a very small community. People will remember you, so be remembered for being helpful, for being nice, for being a problem solver, whatever your story is going to be. Try things out. You're at a point right now, maybe you don't know specifically what you want to do in human factors, but you love it. Or maybe you don't know human factors or UX. Try both. Try to do internships, try to do research. Try to just do coffee talks if you can with people that have cool jobs, like message them if they have time, that's great, ask them if they could get some coffee, and tell you about that. So that would be my leaving advice. I received a lot of that.
I'd say do internships if you can. If you're trying to go into industry, definitely do internships if you can. If not, network, reach out to those who've been in your program, or in the Houston HFUF chapter is pretty good. And even just the local, the Vapor organization, like you said, it's a small group. Like if you haven't gone to these meetings already, you'll see that every year you kind of see the same people, which is good. But yeah, so it's a small community. You'll be remembered for sure, and just network, and don't be afraid to get out of your circle or out of the bubble. I still am very shy, but it's I had to work on getting out and networking and socializing. So.
So this is old man advice, but be a lifelong learner. And so I'm learning as much today as I did as an undergraduate and a graduate student on a daily basis. And so long as you do that every day and you have natural curiosity and try and acquire new skills, then some of these questions about how do I keep jobs, how do I get better jobs, how do I do all these things, that just all comes naturally if every day you're soaking it in and you're learning more and more. And so learn as a lifelong professional.
I think everybody took all the good advice already.
That's part of the reason I jumped in first.
But no, I was going to say stay curious and always try to be learning more. But probably my biggest thing of advice, kind of what I touched on earlier, is it probably specifically where you're at in your career. Don't imposter syndrome is real, but everybody feels it. Don't compare yourself to others. Everybody's in a unique situation, and I wouldn't say that it'll all work out great for everybody. I'm sure that's not true, but just don't put so much pressure on yourselves. Just go after what you're naturally interested in. I think that passion will shine through and help you along in your career. Don't always be chasing, things that may not give you what you really need or what you really think you want.
Let's thank our panelists.
For keeping us under control. So as I said, Hannah is taking over from me, and she snuck in the back there, so that's Hannah. She's going to be the president now. I do have one other thing that I now have to do, because as past president, I'm now responsible for the conference, which will be coming up in 2024, probably in April.
Sure.
I'm going to go with April. So if you're writing papers, thinking of posters, things you want to present, it's a really cool one-day situation, and we'll be sending out information closer to the date, but we'll probably be having submissions probably around the end of the year, beginning of January at the latest. So so that's going to come pretty quick. So congratulations to me. I think that's it. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and I think the panelists will stick around for a little bit, and feel free to ask questions to anybody. You can even ask me questions if you want. I might not be able to answer them. But again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll probably have something in February-ish, I think, some kind of a speaker, but I'm not speaking for the president anymore. So the president and the program director need to get together and decide what the next thing is. But anyway, thank you all so much for coming out, and thank you to our panelists.